Hi guys, this is from techcentury and this is finally my full review of the HTC One. So before I start the review, I want to mention that I now owned this device for 4 weeks and I've used it as my primary phone ever since. So I think this is a good time where I saw the strengths and weaknesses of this phone, and it's now the right time to share my experiences with you guys. So to get started, I want to cover the hardware. Of course, one of the biggest features that we'll see right away is the 4.7-inch screen with a resolution of 1080x1920, so full HD resolution, and a PPI of over 400 PPI. So this is certainly one of the best screens I've ever seen on any device, phone, tablet, whatever, you name it. It's certainly one of the best screens I've ever seen. And everything just looks absolutely sharp. If you're looking at text, if you're looking at pictures, it just looks amazing. Now, one thing that I want to mention though is that the screen difference in terms of clarity and quality between the iPhone 5 screen and then the HTC One isn't as big as if you would, for example, go from an iPad mini to an iPhone. So while there is still like a 100 PPI difference, both screens are just great. And if you're going back from the HTC to the iPhone, you're not feeling like the iPhone has a bad screen. So the HTC One certainly has one of the best screens out there, but it's not like all other screens would look crap, at least if they're around the 300 PPI mark. So besides the screen, of course, the boom sound speakers on the front, the dual speakers, are one of the features that HTC really advertises on this phone, and also one of the features that I just enjoy the most. So where the boom sound speaker really shines, of course, if you're watching YouTube footage. So this is actually footage of the ultra pixel camera that you'll find on the HTC One that I uploaded to the channel a few days ago. And so if you're watching YouTube videos or just in general a lot of videos, then the HTC One is just a perfect choice for you. Also, if you're listening, for example, to Spotify or a service similar to that, or just listening to music in general, then this really is a great device because you can just basically put it on a tablet stand, or if you have a case with a stand function, and then just listen to the music, and it's an absolutely amazing experience. If the room is rather quiet, this really fills the room, and there's nothing that I can say really to complain about the speakers, just the best speakers that I've ever heard on a phone. And if you use the HTC One and then go back to a standard phone, I would say, like the iPhone 5 or just a phone with speakers on the back, then it's a night and day difference that is just absolutely insane. In terms of build quality, of course, we'll have an all aluminum finish also here around the back. While this certainly feels like a great build quality, and while this is a great build quality, one of the downsides is certainly that if you're using intensive apps or if you're downloading a big file, then this phone really heats up, and the aluminum takes it part that it really spreads around the whole back of the device and that it gets noticeably warm. Now, not to an extent where it burns your leg or anything, but certainly noticeable, and which, at least for me, doesn't always feel comfortable in the hand anymore. Now, you're probably likely to carry it in a case as I do, just because I don't want to get it scratched up. And then it's not the biggest issue, but still it's something to consider that it's noticeably getting warm. And I'm especially looking forward to comparing this with the Samsung Galaxy S4 with the plastic build, if this might do a better job at the heat compensation. Inside we'll also find a Snapdragon 600 quad-core processor at 1.7 GHz, which is an absolute powerhouse. You can basically throw whatever you want at it. For example, here we have an optimized game, Reign of Emira or something it's called, for the Snapdragon 600 platform. And this just looks absolutely amazing, performs absolutely well, and also other games like, for example, Real Racing are not breaking a sweat on the HTC One. So this is definitely a device that you can pick up without having to worry about maxing out the specs in, I don't know, 3 months or 5 months. This should really last you also the time of a contract, which is 2 years. So now the game is almost started up. I have to warn you, I'm not the best at this game, I'm actually pretty crappy, but I just want to show you overall the performance also when it comes to gameplay. So I'm basically just button smashing and overall I just have to say that playing games on here is a great experience, also again because of the boom sound speakers. Now, of course, this sound doesn't really translate now because I'm using a lapel mic, which is very far away from the phone itself, so you probably barely hear any sound. But this really just adds to the overall experience, and I can honestly not imagine why other phone manufacturers haven't started doing the same. Also, one of my favorite games here is Bowling, and actually just from those like 30 seconds of play, this already heats up on the back. So this is one of the things that I don't really enjoy too much. This also depends on what game you're playing. So for example, if you're playing like such an easy game, for example, like this bowling game right here, then it's not an issue. But if you're playing intensive games like Wheel Racing or this Reign of Amira, then it's certainly an issue. Now I'll probably be pretty bad at this game because I'm right-handed and I just use the left hand for this video purpose. But this is also a game that makes a lot of fun and just looks great, no stutters, and that's also the experience that I have with the HTC One overall. The performance is great, and now's the best part, if we take a look, actually power saver is on. So this actually clocks down the CPU even further to conserve power, and still there are no stutters anywhere. Not with intensive games as I showed you now, or with any other test. So you can run this at power saving mode and not run into any performance issues. And to be honest, with most of the Android phones that I had before, even if I was running them just in a regular mode, I often did experience stutters or other lags. And now here I can run it in power saving and it still performs absolutely amazing, which is insane in my opinion. If we take a look at the cameras on the front, we'll find a 2 megapixel camera, and I'll quickly switch to the camera so you can just swipe in and then you see it right here. So here you see my camera and camera light and everything. So the front facing camera is certainly pretty amazing because it has a wide angle lens, so you can really capture a lot of footage. I'll show you some of the footage that I recorded. And the back facing camera is of course the hyped ultra pixel camera, which is basically just a 4 megapixel regular camera. The shutter speed is very fast once it's focused. And of course you also have the Zoe button right here, which will capture a couple of photos as you see right here, and also a video straight away, which is pretty nice. And so you just hit the button right here and then you see how it fills up. And so this captures a Zoe image, but here's a Zoe where it demonstrates like what you can do. So for example, you can now just stop at this frame that you want. So for example, when the train's coming in, you can just stop it here, then edit it, and then use it. So that's a pretty nice feature that I enjoy using. Also just adds some kind of livelihood to the pictures, if you want to call it like that. In terms of camera interface, I'm not really that impressed. A lot of those settings are really hidden in the menu right here. And so for example, what I've seen from the Galaxy S4, it seems like Samsung has found a better way to implement it. I have to say I was pretty impressed with the photo quality in comparison to like a regular 8 megapixel camera that you, for example, find on the iPhone 5. This performs in a similar way. It isn't much better or much worse. In low light, it certainly performs better, but you can really get some nice pictures that I'll show you on the screen now. And so while I think the camera is nothing or not a reason why you should buy the HTC One, it's certainly also not a reason why you shouldn't buy the HTC One. So it performs good overall, and of course also this front-facing camera with the wide angle lens is certainly a good choice if you're vlogging, for example, because the microphones also pick up great sound. If we talk about call quality on the HTC One, I was fairly impressed. I didn't have any issues and didn't really get any bad feedback or anything, so coming from an iPhone 5, it's certainly pretty nice. Getting into software and Sense 5, I know that Sense doesn't really have the best reputation. And I have to say, while I haven't used Sense 4 before, I think that Sense 5 actually is a great addition to the HTC One, which really just adds some kind of polish and also elegance to the Android operating system. So for example, here we have Blink Feed, which I actually use more often than I thought. And so this just really combines your information from social networks and shows them into a timeline. We can then, for example, just like take a look at the article right here from Engadget. And so this is a feature that I use sometimes, and another feature is just overall how sleek and elegant this looks. If you only have, for example, the weather widget right here, and that's pretty much plain it. And besides that, I just think it looks really sleek and elegant. And for example, little touches like here in the clock, where you can just set your alarm. And you see right here that this always stops at 10-minute intervals. So it's those little things that I really appreciate and that kind of make me feel like this could have been an Apple product, because it seems like HTC really paid attention to detail, and so I think this is pretty amazing. Last but certainly not least, I want to cover battery life. Unfortunately, this is one part where the HTC One basically failed to impress me too much. If you see right here, then you can see that usually a fully charged battery lasts for me 11 hours and 51 minutes, which is okay, I guess, but not really too great for me. So oftentimes I find myself recharging the phone before the end of the day, which is pretty much a pain, especially as you see right here, because it takes 3 hours to recharge the battery to full, which is pretty long in my estimation. But I also have to say that I'm a really heavy phone user. So I'm using YouTube and Twitter all day long. So this is certainly not the usage of an average consumer, I would say. So if you're using a phone a little bit less than I do, then you shouldn't really run into any issues with getting through a full day. And if you take a look at battery usage, you'll see right here that HTC Sense and YouTube take up most of the battery life. In my tests, or just in my experience overall, YouTube and Falcon Pro usually take up most of the battery life that I have here on the HTC One. If we take a look at the capacitive buttons, we'll see that we only have 2 and not 3. The HTC logo isn't a button that you can press. This wasn't an issue for me at all. I never really had the feeling that I wanted to touch the HTC logo, maybe because I'm not used to Android that much coming from an iPhone. But if you hold the home button for a long time, then you get to Google Now. If you just double tap it, then you get to the multitasking menu, which also looks different than the stock Android one. And I actually feel that this is a really nice solution for your multitasking, because you can just choose really fast from your 9 recent apps. And that overall is just a pretty good experience. One thing to notice though, that if you have more than 9 apps running and you flick one away, then this one isn't coming in. So you really are limited to the 9 last apps that you've used. But then if you don't using an app anymore, then you can just flick it away, which works pretty nice. This also works in landscape, which is a really nice touch for me. And one thing that I didn't like is that sometimes these capacitive buttons didn't react. I actually made a video about this, where for 40 seconds they didn't respond at all. Now I have to say that just yesterday HTC pushed an over-the-air update to fix some of those issues and also to improve some other things like the low light performance for the camera. So I yet have to test it out if that may be also just getting rid of this issue with the capacitive buttons, because some people said they have the same issues. Some of the features that I would have wanted to see on the HTC One are certainly wireless charging. I think it's a shame that HTC hasn't included this, especially since the battery doesn't really last the whole day for me. So wireless charging would have been amazing on such a high-end device. I'm not quite sure why HTC didn't do that. When it comes to storage, we find 32 GB on this version. And I have to say, overall, this is more than enough storage for me. I don't need an SD card slot if I have 32 GB on board. You might feel different, but then there's still a 64 GB version available. So to end this review, I don't really want to give the HTC One a final rating. I only want to say that I really enjoyed using it for 4 weeks and that I'm certainly looking forward to using this phone even more. It kind of feels to me like Apple finally made an Android phone. I know this sounds weird, but that's just how I feel, because the build quality, the design, and also the touches to the software just feel absolutely amazing. And they're just minor gripes that I have with the phone. Overall, it's one of the best phones, if not the best phone that I've ever used. And I just think that HTC really hit a home run with this phone when it comes to build quality. Features like the front-facing speakers and of course the screen are just absolutely amazing. I think there's a specific group of customers that this phone is made for. And I think that's basically people who've used iPhones for a very long time and now are looking for something or some features that Apple will never deliver. For example, the open operating system, also front-facing speakers, an even bigger display than 4 inches, and then the HTC One is for you. If you've used the Galaxy S3 and if you're fine with the build quality and also touch width, then you probably should go with the Galaxy S4, which I'll cover very soon. But if you're looking for an Android phone that's really elegant, that steps up in the build quality to Apple products, get the HTC One. You won't be disappointed. As I mentioned, it's probably the best phone that I have ever used, and I'm just absolutely happy with it, and I couldn't recommend it more. If you pick it up, you won't be disappointed. Also, if you're having to sign a 2-year contract for it, I don't think that this will be outdated anytime soon. It's just a great phone overall that I really enjoyed. And that's pretty much it. So this video got a little bit longer than I expected, but this is just a fantastic phone with a lot of features that you have to cover. And I just hope that you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please make sure to hit the like button below, as well as subscribe to the channel if you're not already. This is a fantastic phone that you won't regret picking up. This is me from techcentury. Thanks for watching. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below, what you think of this phone, and also how you like the review. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.